So we're going to talk about automated testing using Behat, or Behat, or whatever else you want to pronounce it. I think the cool kids call it Behat. I've always called it Behat because of the logo on the Drupal extension project page. It has a bee on a hat. So I really don't care. So who in the room has used Behat a little bit at least? Installed it? Nobody? You? Okay, you're my expert. I've installed it, and so you can correct me every time I get something wrong. Everybody else is going to get a lot out of this session. So I have been looking into Behat and this type of application acceptance testing frameworks for a few months. Certainly not an expert in any of it. So if you're just looking to get started and getting some pointers on getting rolling on this type of testing, then this session will be perfect for you. If you're looking for somebody that understands everything there is to know about BDD and Behat and acceptance testing in Drupal, then I'm not your guy. So it sounds like we're all the right people. For me, I'm Carl Kudrowski. I'm a solutions architect at VML, which is a digital ad agency based in Kansas City. I run our Drupal practice there. I also help organize our local Kansas City Drupal users group. So if you're ever in Kansas City and you would like to come and hang out with a bunch of Drupal nerds, we meet the last Tuesday of every month. Okay, so let's get a bit of an agenda. So what we're going to see today. We're going to define, poorly, the definition of BDD. And if you talk to BDD or TDD zealots, they're going to disagree with what we'll say. But the idea here is we want to kind of look at the tool set and how we can use it effectively within Drupal, not just for BDD, but for a lot of different use cases. The big thing that I have been looking for within Drupal is a way to do acceptance and regression testing of Drupal sites. So not just unit testing of module code, which a lot of us write very little of if you're just bolting a site together. How do you write acceptance testing for your business requirements at the application level as opposed to the a unit of code level? And I think with Behat that this is certainly the most promising tool and approach that I've seen. So it's not, if you look at a very definition of what behavior-driven development is, then what we'll see here is not going to match that 100%. We're going to look at how to write tests. We're going to look at the tools that we can use. And there are a couple of different ways that you can structure your tool set to test Drupal. You can do it completely outside of Drupal and just be using Behat all by itself. But there's a new module that we're going to take a look at that makes it pretty easy to maintain your acceptance testings for individual modules as well as your sites, your features, however you want to kind of structure your tests. So we're going to take a look at those. And that's going to be some live demo and coding, so it's going to be exciting stuff, I hope. Or I'm going to look like an idiot too. One of the two will be good. Then we're going to look at some kind of approaches to integrating Behat tests into your projects. I've been doing software development practices for the better part of 25 years, so I've seen a lot of different approaches to trying to get people to test their code. So we'll look at a couple of different things that I have found useful in the past in order to get people to do more of this type of testing in your projects. Okay, so here's our bad definition. So this is the good definition. So it's a communication collaboration framework for developers, QA, and non-technical business participants in a software project. Doesn't mean anything, but that's what Wikipedia said. So the idea of BDD is more like a process rather than a tool suite of communicating between your business users and your technical team in such a way that you can use the artifacts of that communication as the inputs to your test, right? So in a perfect world, which I haven't found this to exist yet, your business users would help you write your Behat tests. Good luck. So, yeah, we all laugh, and that's pretty funny. But they can read them. And as we're going to see when we look at the syntax for the Gherkin, the language you use to write your tests, it's very Englishy. So you could have a business analyst, you can have a QA tester, you can have a developer or a technical architect write a suite of these tests and hand them off to your business user. You can read them and you say, yes, if all of this stuff works, I'll pay you. or I won't fire you, depending on your relationship with your client. So definition in practice. So this is kind of how I think of using Behat and BDD within Drupal projects. So we're going to develop applications by describing the behavior of the feature of our application. We're going to use an English-like language to do that. Then we're going to implement the feature that we have. Then we're going to validate that feature by using the descriptions that we did in the first point, and then we'll just lather, rinse, and repeat until we're done. So that's kind of like, that's the very same kind of process you use when you're doing test-driven development. First you write the test, then you write the code, then you run the test, and then you keep iterating on that until all the tests pass. So that is kind of the golden goal, as I see it, for how you would do this type of testing. Perfectly valid to do all of this after your application is already done. Right? If you need to have a suite of regression tests because you've got a big phase 2 coming up or whatever, very valid to write a whole big suite of tests for the application as it stands to make sure you don't break things. So that you don't have to do the test first approach, but I think with these tools, it gives us the ability to do so, which can be pretty helpful. All right, so let's start looking at some of the things we can use to do all of this. So how do you describe the behavior? Use a language called Gherkin, which is also, I think, a pickle. So it's the definition I've come up with, I stole this from somewhere, but it took out the declarative part. So their definition was a business readable domain-specific language for writing behavior descriptions. I put the declarative part in there to just really describe just to point out that you're describing what this thing is supposed to do, not how it's going to do it. So it's kind of like SQL. SQL is declarative. You declare, I want data that matches this criteria, and it gives it to you. You don't tell the database engine how to do it. Gherkin's the very same way. You describe, here's where I want to start, this is what I want to do, and this should be the output. Okay, so let's take a look and see what it looks like. This is one of the easiest possible or smallest possible tests you can write with Gherkin. So you have a feature. So a feature is, in this case, it just says homepage. So it could be anything else. So this is a thing on your website. And then you have multiple scenarios that you want to test to make sure that that feature is correct. And then inside that scenario, you can have multiple steps to execute it. And the simplest one is the given and then, where you're given your precondition is all you need in order to run your test. Then the one I left out here is the when, which is some type of user action. So, given that I'm on the home page, then I should see welcome to Behat, right? You could have the second easiest one be given I'm on the home page, I type something into the search box and I click the search button, I should see search results. So those are really, really simple tests. And then you organize all of these things into a file per feature. And then that file contains multiple scenarios, and then each one of those scenarios has a bunch of tests, right? So it's super simple. And as you can see, you can have the feature name and the description of the feature and the scenario name are all just descriptions, right? So they're not used to actually run the test itself. It's all of the steps. So each step in your Gherkin file is going to really equate to a method or a function in PHP that matches on a regular expression for that step. So that's what's going to execute the code. So every single one of those lines in your step, whether it's a given, a when, or a then, has some code that executes behind it. So the code that says when I am on the, given I'm on the home page is going to execute a function that is going to move your headless browser, in our case, to the home page. And then when I should see is just it's going to parse the page. It's going to look for that string. Okay? Easy peasy. All right, puzzle pieces. So this is the other bits and bobs we're going to use in order to execute these things. So we're going to have Behat. Behat is a BDD framework written in PHP. If you've heard of Cucumber in the Ruby community, same thing. All Behat does is it ingests your Gherkin file, and then it executes those steps against whatever you're telling it to. If you look at the Behat website, the example they use is testing the ls command in Unix. So it doesn't even have to be a website. So Behat is not a web testing framework specifically, BDD framework. Right? In order to get it to work with the web, we need Mink. So Mink is an extension of Behat, again, written in PHP, that uses a list of drivers to test websites. Okay? And then we have a Drupal extension, which is a Behat Mink extension that provides Drupal-specific behavior. Remember that each one of those steps in our Gherkin file executes a function in PHP. So there are some Drupal-specific steps that have been implemented in the Drupal extension for Behat that allow us to say things like, given I am logged in as an administrator, and it knows how to do that. Okay? It can be used to create nodes, all kinds of stuff. So we'll take a look at that as well. We do a little bit of our example. And then we also have the Behat Runner. This is the module I mentioned just a little at the beginning. It's a Drupal module that makes it easy to discover Behat tests within your Drupal project. Okay, we'll write one of those, hopefully, part of our demo. Okay, so tooling. Let's look at how to use these things in a couple of different ways. So I mentioned earlier you can use Behat as a standalone tool outside of your Drupal project, and you can also use it as a Drupal module. So let's say you want to create, let's say you have a QA department, or you have just testers or whatever in your development team that are not Drupal developers, but they're responsible for writing all of these acceptance testings and running them. It may be a good idea to keep these things separate from your Drupal project itself. Right? Behat allows you to do that. So what you can do is you create in this case, this is what I did. We're going to take a look at this as an example. But you just make a directory anywhere in your file system you want, right? And then in there you put a composer.json file that has all of the PHP extensions or libraries that you're going to need in order to run Behat. Who here knows or doesn't? Who here doesn't know what Composer does? Okay, so everybody knows what Composer does. I don't have to kind of okay. So then you just run Composer install, and it is going to suck down everything it needs for the Drupal extension, which has a dependency on Behat. So it's going to download all of the Behat, Mink, all of that jazz, and stick in and create a bin directory to run your Behat tests. Really super simple. So what that is going to do is that's going to create a directory structure that looks like this. So it's going to set up so this is your JSON, your Composer JSON file that you created. It'll create the Composer lock so it keeps all of the versions straight. It has the vendor directory, and in here you're going to see all the PHP libraries it downloads. Creates a bin directory for the Behat executable, and then it's got a stock Behat.yaml file for all of the configuration. All right. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like in here. No. Where did I stick it? That it? Yay. Okay, so there's the standard config file that the Behat extension uses. So it just it defines a directory called features, where it's going to find the features that it's going to run, and it's going to then it configures right here for the Mink extension what headless browser drivers it's going to use. So the standard one is one called GUID, which doesn't execute any JavaScript or anything like that. It just essentially does DOM inspection. So it's a headless browser that all it does is all it's going to do is run a browser and then do some inspection of the DOM. Selenium is a little more complicated. It's also quite a bit slower. I'm going to go through a list of those kind of later on. The other key is you have the base URL of the site that you're going to be testing right in here. All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Drupal extensions as well. But black box is the easiest one to use. It doesn't require that. It essentially just does like curl testing. You can think about it that way. It just makes HTTP requests to your website, and then it uses the GUID extension to inspect it. Okay. What else do we want to look at here? There's the features directory. I'm not going to look at a whole lot of it right now, but there's your homepage feature that we looked at. So that's all good. All good there. Let's flip back here. Okay, we took a look at that already. That's the same thing that we were looking at earlier. So this is what you would. We already looked at these files here, and so I won't go through this again. But you just create the directory that you're telling Behat to look in, and you just put all your feature files in there. So we just have one that has one scenario that has 2 steps in it. So let's run it. Hey, that I'm a genius. All right, so my test passed, I get paid. And what we were doing is testing this site. Oops. Right here. So you can see the URL is just Behat, and this has a homepage of Node, right? And it says, welcome to Behat. So that's it. Now, if I were to go in here and, oh, let's not get crazy. I'll do that later. Not too much to do. If you want to change it, it'll fail, but I've got a failing one I'll show you later. But that is the easiest thing you can do to set up Behat. So that's all you need to do to get started. Now, let's look at setting this up under Behat Runner. So the concepts are the same. So instead of just creating a directory and then creating a composer.json file, you actually just install a Drush module. You install a Drupal module, but you have to use Drush. I didn't believe him the first time I did it, and it borked my install so much I had to recreate it. So I put it in all caps. You have to use Drush. For some reason, and it's still in beta, so this will likely change, but for now, you have to use Drush to install it. So all you have, also, you don't have to do this, and this is what we remember we looked at the Behat.yaml file. It had the base URL that it was going to test with. If the module will look in your settings PHP for the base URL and use that to populate the YAML file. If you don't, you'll end up with a site named default. So if you forget to do this, you can just go into your YAML file, and I'll show you where that is in just a second, and fix it. And then you just run drush enable -y Behat runner. Giving the -y will download everything that you need and install it. So this will also install another module called Composer Manager. So it does the exact same thing that we did when we were running it standalone. So it uses a module, Composer Manager, to use Composer to download all of the dependencies, just like we did when we did it standalone. And then there are 3 drush commands that you'll use to manage your tests. This one's BRM, which is not, this is not Behat remove everything. It's BRM is what is it? Register module, something like that. It actually goes out and searches for all the Behat tests in your project and registers them. And then LS will list all the ones that it knows about, and then BRUN is the Behat run command. So let's go look at that. So I've got the site that we were just looking at. Contrib. So I've installed the Behat runner, which then installs the Composer Manager, and I run all of that other kind of jazz. What this will do is it installs a whole bunch of stuff in site's default files. That's where I have my files directory configured to live. It creates the Behat runner as well as the Composer directory. In the Composer directory, it's where your Composer JSON and lock file is, just like we saw when we were doing it standalone. And then in the Behat runner directory, that's where your Behat YAML file runs, as well as that XML file is the output of a test that I've run earlier. And then it also, let's see, the Composer Manager creates a vendor directory under sites all, and that's where all of the libraries get downloaded to. right? So it's just a little bit more complicated than when you install it all by yourself, but the modules inside of Drupal are taking care of managing where all that stuff gets put. So it's essentially the same thing as we saw earlier. So let's look at so if you do the BRM, it's going to go out and look for all the tests, but we've got them all in there already. So if we do a BLS, there's one test that comes with the Behat runner. There's a feature. So that's in sites, all modules. We can look at that in a minute. But that's if you do a drush brun, it will run that one test. Now the nice thing is with Behat runner that it is going with the BRM command will go out and find all of your tests, so that you don't have to mess with where these things are. You just have to create them, and it just goes out and finds them all. So so it makes it easy to add tests. Okay. So there's a number of different ways to do that, though. So probably the easiest way just to add generic tests for your site is to create a custom module. So instead of like when we had in the standalone, we just create that features directory and just pile all of our features in there. You can do the same thing with Behat runner. You just create a custom module that will hold all of your features. So that's simple to do. You just create, if you've ever created a module in Drupal, you just have the name, the description, and the core you depend on. I put dependency in here, a Behat runner, but you don't have to. And then you create this modules file that overrides one hook, right? So it just says, this is a hook Behat info, and I named my module Behat Drupalcorn. And then all you have to do is tell it where your features are, and they're just in a subdirectory in the module named features, and then that's it. And then you just go and you just put put all of your feature files in that features subdirectory, and you're ready to go. So again, we've got this feature in our home directory, or in our module directory, that we can use. So let's go create one. Nothing up my sleeve. All right, but I'm going to do the Julia Childs thing here. If I can remember where I put this thing. Or Behat Drupalcorn module. Okay. Learn how to type. All right, now we have a Behat Drupalcorn module. It's the same info file that we looked at earlier. Again, it's got a couple of comments in it. There is there's an example file within the Behat runner module. If you go in there, you could just copy and paste the hook. Because it comes with a test, it has to implement this hook as well, and you can just copy and paste it. And then in our features module, we have our homepage feature that just says "Welcome to Behat," right? So we can do our drush BLS. Oh no, we don't have our new test. It's because we didn't run our RM, right? So this registers our tests. Did I type something wrong? Oh, no, I did. You have to enable your module. All right. BRM, BLS. Now it knows about my new features. Oops. Now I can run all my tests. So it's going to make sure that we still have the Drupal's already installed, and now I have a feature that says, I have a home page that says, "Welcome to Behat." Awesome. And then you can just keep piling features in that feature directory until files come home. Right? So that's one way to do it. Another way, and you can do this you can use that same approach on custom modules. So one of the ways that I can think of to organize these Behat tests is when you write a custom module to implement a feature that has a requirement, you do the same thing. You just put in your custom module the hook Behat info and put all your features within your custom module directory. And then you can have the custom module we just looked at that's just this kind of catch-all for things that don't fit within an individual module. The other thing you can do, and this is probably a little bit more, I think a little bit more common when you're doing more like site building, is that a lot of us organize all of our site building bits into features. So since features is just a module, you can put your Behat test right in your features module. So let's we're going to assume that we have a blog feature, and I have one we'll look at. So in our blog feature, let's go ahead and copy this thing over real quick. So instead of in here, nothing on my sleeve. Okay. Okay, so now I have a feature named Behat Talk Blog, and I will just enable that. Yep. It's a great thing about doing live demos. Everybody else in the room feels smart. All right, so we've got a blog. Let's just take a look at it real quick. So it added a new tab here that has a list of, well, it doesn't have any blog posts in here. It also has a role of blogger, and it has a view that lists all of the blog posts. So it created a type blog post, a view called blog, and it created a role called blogger. So that's essentially all that feature does. Okay, so when we're looking at this, so we want to create a blog. Let's just look at the easiest way is to just look at this one. So it creates the feature creates a whole bunch of include files, right? So the way that a feature is organized, it's pretty simple if you look at the module. This from here up is what the feature had. So all it does is includes a bunch of inc files. So I just added one, right? So I added one additional include file to the feature module, which just does this. So it has the blog name. It just overrides that hook Behat info and adds the feature directory. Oops. And then add that line to the end of the blog module we just looked at. And then we added this feature to our features directory. So let's go take a look at that. So that's the same thing. So nothing on my sleeve, right? It should say, given I'm on the home page, I click blog, which is the menu item, then I should see the really cool blog. So let's register our new tests. Make sure it works. Yep. Now let's run it. Run all the tests. I don't know why you get warnings. Oh no! That's an abject failure. So what's wrong with that? So it should say, it said blog, it said really cool blog, the test really cool blog is not found anywhere on the current page. Oh gosh, that's embarrassing, isn't it? It's almost like I had planned that. So, oh, it just says blog. Well, that's unfortunate. Let's go fix that little guy. So yeah, the title is not the really cool blog. It just says blog. And save it. Test it. Yay! Now we just have to go over here, our structure, our features, recreate it. All right, that'll fail because I don't have my permission set. And then I'll do that. Right. Or you can just update our feature. Everything's good, just to show that it's not clobbering everything. Oops. Run it, and everything ought to be happy again. There we go. So we're all good. So that cycle works pretty fast. Right? Does that all make sense? That's about it for the mechanics. All right. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Drupal extension. I mentioned that there are some options that you have with the Drupal extension as well as the extension. So there are a few different drivers that the Drupal extension provides for you. The one we've been using is a black box driver. So all this thing does is it assumes you have no privileged access to the site. It's really just you're an anonymous user, you're hitting a web page, you're checking the contents of that web page, right? So that's all it does. The nice thing about it, though, is the server can be local or remote. So you could actually write, using the black box driver, you can test a staging server. So you could have a smoke test that you've written in Behat that will run against your staging server before you turn it over to your users for UAT or something along that line. So that's really handy for those things. It's also the simplest thing that you can install. It does provide, and we'll look at this too, it provides region maps. So I'll show you an example of this, but it provides a way for you to define the regions within your page. So you can say the footer is in the thing that has the CSS class of hash footer. And then you can say, I should see powered by Drupal in the footer region, which is really nice. Because there's a lot of things in Drupal where you're placing blocks within different regions and different on the page, and that's what you're really needing to test. So that's it. It also has a way for checking for Drupal errors and messages. So it's got some nice syntax for your Gherkin file to say, I should see an error, blah, 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 or I should see the message, whatever. The second one is the Drush driver. So this has the ability to test logged in users. It can also be run local and remote, but it uses Drush under the covers to actually do the execution on the remote server. So just like running a Drush status or any other Drush command on a remote server, you have to have all that set up. So you have to have your secure shell login or whatever it is you're using to access your remote server set up so you can run it. It's not just hitting a remote website. It's actually logging into the server and executing your tests for you. Then the third one, the last one, is the Drupal API driver. So this allows us to do the same things we can do with logged in users and specific roles. This one allows us to create nodes, vocabularies, terms, and all that in the test specs. We're going to look at that in just a second. And it's obviously the fastest, but it has to be run locally. So this cannot be executed remotely. This and the Drush one bootstraps quite a bit of Drupal in order to run it, but in order to get the ability to do some of the things that it does, like the creating of nodes and things, it has to be run locally. That may change. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't be able to execute that via Drush at some point, but not sure exactly why it doesn't right now. So let's look at a quick example. We have 10 minutes. So this is just a test that you can run to create a blog post and check to make sure it's there. So the one new thing that you have on here is that @API at the top. What that tells the Drush driver or the what was the other one? All right, one of those last two drivers, that I want you to bootstrap Drupal. Right? So that's how that's how it gets the Drupal code bootstrapped, so that the scenarios that are run can actually use Drupal functions. So when those steps that you're running compile down into PHP code, that PHP code can use the Drupal API. Okay. So let's go do one of those real quick. So we're going to. All right. Got a blog feature. So we're going to create one of those things. If I have that open already. Nope, darn it. Anyway, I hate to watch me flounder a smidge. Sites, all modules, features, Behat features. Okay, so this is just the blog feature that we created earlier. I think that's the whole page. Yeah, okay, get rid of that. All right, so we have just updated the feature and we added the one thing at the bottom. So let's run and see what we get. I didn't run a new test. Guess what I forgot to do? So BRM is the new clear cache, actually. Right? When in doubt, whatever. So what it did is it created the one node there, and then it checked to make sure that it saw first post on the home page. Now the cool thing is that it does that temporarily. So when you go back to your website, and you look at the blog page, it doesn't have any first post or anything, so it cleans up behind itself. So you don't have all the cruft laying around everywhere when you're running your tests. So each one of those tests is a self-contained acceptance test. And it can get really fancy. So we can just to show you one that's kind of really fancy. Oh, this is really working without a net, because I wrote this just a little bit ago, and I actually haven't run it before. So let's just see what happens. So in this case, I've set up the pager in my feature to only create the blog listing should only be 3 posts long. So I created 4 blog posts. So I've said that I should go to the blog and I should see first, second, and third, but not fourth. And let's not be shocked if this doesn't work, but just to show you how you can set up some relatively complicated tests on your site. Pretty cool. It was really simple. Hey, a miracle happened.
The live demo worked.
Yeah, I know. This is bizarre. I've done 2 presentations today, and the live demos both worked. It's like I'm going to go get buy a lottery ticket.
So that content now exists on the site, correct?
No, it's gone.
Oh, it goes away.
Yeah.
Okay. Do the node IDs increment still? Like,
I don't know. It's a good question. Likely. I don't know how they wouldn't, because it doesn't do like a reinstall of anything. So yeah, I would bet the node IDs would increment. Okay. So in the last couple of minutes that we have here. Now I've been told that the booze doesn't show up until 6. So if we go over just a little, don't kill me. So let's talk about. So we talked about for the Drupal extension. There's 3 different ways of got the 3 different drivers. Mink has a whole bunch of drivers as well for testing websites. We've been using GUID. So GUID's the simplest thing you can do, just does some DOM inspection, right? But you can see here we've also defined a few other ones. I get ahead of myself. So there's GUID and there's Selenium. Oh, before we get to those, subcontext. So this lets you write your own step definitions. So if you have custom code that you want to write for your features or for your custom modules, you can write them. And I believe if you named them, you notice that I had in that feature, I had behat_test.inc. Because I believe the behat runner, unless if it doesn't now, I think it's planned to. It's going to inspect all of your ink files that end in behat.ink. And it will add those step definitions into its library so that it knows how to run them. So if you have a GUID scenario or GUID steps in your scenario that don't match anything yet, you can write one. And that's really, really simple, actually really dead simple to do. I'll do it later if we've got time. But I'll show you how a really easy way to define the function that's going to get executed. It's as easy as writing the test that you wish existed, and it gives you the boilerplate code you can copy and paste into your own PHP file. Yeah?
So if you're going to use like Selenium, do you get like more commands available because it can do more? Or?
No, it's more the functionality of the headless browser. Okay. So GUID won't execute JavaScript, for instance. Right? Selenium, you can actually run a Selenium headless or headed, right? And if you run it headed, it will actually use your browser locally, and you can see the test run in your browser. Okay. Very entertaining. And I haven't really known why that's useful, but you can do that. Yeah, but let's just kind of go to the next section here, and we'll talk about that. So the Mink drivers. So GUID, right, is pure PHP, doesn't have any external dependencies, super fast, very simple. You don't have to install, like if you're going to install Selenium, the headless driver, you have to install on Java, and you have to install Selenium, and then you have to have a running Selenium server on your machine. Right? So it's a whole lot more than just installing GUID. There's nothing to do if you want to use GUID and just to do the DOM inspection. There's a few different JavaScript ones. Zombie.js is one, but it requires you to install Node. It supports JavaScript, obviously. Phantom.js is another one that has the benefit of being a WebKit browser, but where GUID and Zombie.js use a custom DOM implementation, so that's kind of cool. And then you have the Selenium server. So it requires, again, Java and running Selenium server, but it has been around forever. So if you look at Zombie and Phantom, they're pretty early days, and I would expect them not to be nearly as robust as something like a Selenium server. It is very common already. Some people are very used to it. And Shameless Thievery, I got all the content for those 3 sites from a blog post that came out like 3 days ago, and that's it. This guy goes into the pros and cons of a lot of the, of 3 or 4 of the different Mink drivers, a little bit more detail than I just did. All right, so a couple things about getting started. This will be 1 minute, I swear. All right, so how do you get this into people to get them to use it? The easiest thing is just set the thing up. So if you install the Behat, either standalone with a runner, use the GUID Mink driver, create one test, check in your version control system, then you removed all excuses. All you have to do is go and write a scenario or create a file called blah, blah, blah feature and write your test. You don't have to set anything up, it just runs, right? So then people will start writing them, and you can shame them mercilessly. We'll talk about that in a minute too. Write tests for bugs. So you don't have any tests, I have an existing system. Set up a policy or just have encourage people for some way. As soon as you get a bug report, the first thing you do is you write a Behat test that reproduces that bug. Then you fix it. When the Behat test passes, you check in everything, and you mark the bug as fixed. Automate it. Have it run every time you check code in. So if you have a Jenkins server or some other automated build server, this is the main reason to run it on Drupal projects is for automated testing. You don't have to run a build for a PHP application like you do for things like Java or .NET. You can just have it run all your tests. So it can run all your unit tests, it can run all your Behat tests. Have it email the list of Behat tests to your boss every day, and so whoever writes the most tests gets all of the credit, right? Then how do you make it get part of your culture? You're going to inculcate this into your organization. Make it part of your code reviews. Again, when bugs are marked as fixed, ensure that your QA person or whoever is looking at that test, part of the criteria they have for accepting the fix and closing the bug is, can I go find a test for it, and did it pass? And then reward and shame team members is my favorite. So people that fail to create tests get shamed. We used to have, when I worked on a Java project, the guy that broke the build last had a giant swim noodle that was a neon dragon thing that had crap hanging all over it. It was mounted on a stand. It was 5 feet tall, and it sat on top of his cube, so everybody else in this acres of cubicles could see where the idiot lives. Do that for tests, right? Who checked in code that didn't have a test? He gets this. He gets the trophy of shame, right? So think about things that you can do to get people to encourage to do it, rather than having folks that having a negative kind of connotations to it. All right. I was hoping to talk about that more, but whatever. List of resources. I'll put this. I'll put a link to the presentation in the DrupalCorn site page. But here's a list of good extensions you can use. The GitHub, if you're looking for how to get things installed, my Vagrant Starter project on GitHub has it's got a shell provisioner in it for Drupal that has the steps for installing a standalone Behat installation and a Selenium driver. We don't have any time for questions. I'm already over. But if you have some, I'll stick around. And that's me. Thank you.